Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties, from Keweenaw to Monroe, Chippewa to Berrien. Brought to you by the Michigan Association of Counties. Here's your host, MAC Executive Director, Stephan.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, brought to you by DTE Energy, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. Of course, I'm joined by our Director of Government Affairs, Deena Bosworth. No Megan today. We've got internal committees going on, so her and Hannah are handling that for the rest of us. So it's just Deena and I today. So I hope everyone had a good weekend. Of course, as we move through the podcast, please feel free to answer or ask any questions in the chat, and we will answer them at the end. We always give a little extra time for that as well. So Deena, did you have a good weekend? I know you got seafood up in Houghton that didn't agree with you, but other than that?
Yeah, that did not agree with me. But otherwise, it was a great weekend. It was a great weekend. Out on the water the whole weekend. So
yeah, it was nice. I think we're past, although this week I think we get down into the 60s here in Lansing one day, but then we should be good to go for the summer. The summer officially starts this weekend, right?
Yeah, I just don't know if it's going to be warm this weekend.
Yeah, it doesn't look great down here. But we'll take it. We'll figure it out, right?
Right.
All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. Deena, Friday last week, the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference came out with their projections for where the state's going to end up financially for the year. And what did they say? It sounds like we should be playing Pink Floyd's Money right now.
It's insane how much money they have. I mean, really, between the CARES Act dollars and the American Rescue Plan dollars that are coming into the state. And then we get news on Friday that for fiscal year 21, we're over $1 billion more than we thought we were going to be. It's just crazy. For fiscal year 22, they're talking $776 million more than they thought we were going to be. So that's a significant amount of general fund dollars that now the state legislature has to figure out how to appropriate.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that process then. So, we've got the revenue estimates now. We are in the budget process. There was news that came out last week that the governor and the legislature are getting along again. They're everyone's friends again. So let's talk a little bit about what we can expect over the next kind of 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this happens every year this way. We wait for the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference to come out and tell us really how much money do we have to spend for whatever fiscal year we're working on a budget for. So we get a general idea in January, and then we have another revenue estimating conference in May, which we had last week. That really sets like the overall dollar amount for the state budget. And then the legislative leaders and the governor's office, as long as they're getting along and negotiating, get together and really figure out what targets are. And targets are the dollar figures that they're going to put on each and every different budget. So whether it be the school aid budget, because they have additional school aid revenue, so now they have a new number that they get to meet in their budget, or the general government budget, which is where our revenue sharing is. We have a judiciary budget, we have a transportation budget, we have a Department of Natural Resources budget. So they get together and they say, hey, this is how much money you have, this is how much money you can spend in your budget. Once that happens, then we can actually get back down to work. The budget bills will go to a conference committee, and those, 3 members from the House, 3 members from the Senate will go in together, present a budget. If they all agree on it, they vote for it. It goes back to the House and Senate for a full vote, and then to the governor's office. So,
and by statute, right, they have to have the budget done by July 1st, correct?
Yes.
Technically.
Right. Technically they do. They do.
Well, we'll see how that goes.
It didn't really work real well last year during COVID. So
right.
We'll see what happens this year.
Well, it sounds like things are back on the right track again, as far as at least everyone working together and putting something together where there's input from all 3 legislating bodies that are required for a budget. So that's good news, I think.
And they pick their priorities. They usually have like big picture stuff that they say, hey, you have to incorporate in your budget, and then they leave smaller stuff to committee chairs. So
yeah. So changing gears changing gears a little bit, of course, we had the CDC come out with some different guidelines with regards to vaccination, non-vaccinated and vaccinated people, and what people can and should not be doing. So then just today, the governor announced some changes to the MIOSHA work rules, right?
Yep. Yep. You know, and funny we talk about this right after the budget, because this was something that was happening in Lansing where legislative leaders were absolutely not happy about the proposed MIOSHA rules that were going to come out around COVID-19. So last week, the governor and the legislature came to an agreement, said, hey, the governor said she'll pull back on those proposed MIOSHA rules. Legislature said, great, now we can actually sit down and negotiate out the budget. So the governor had a press conference today and, you know, announced that, you know, no longer do you have to, remote work is not mandated anymore. Apparently over 57% of the state's population is vaccinated now. So now you can go to work as long as you're fully vaccinated. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to worry about social distancing, you know, so.
Yeah, and it sounds like also a lot of, yeah, it's great to hear. And it sounds like some of the other restrictions are getting loosened up as well. You know, as of June 1st, 50% capacity at restaurants. Again, the no masks. And then at July 1st, you know, we're kind of back to 100% normal, it sounds like. So that's some great news coming down the line here. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear our restaurants can hopefully get back on their feet and get people back in there again, and everyone get back to somewhat normal again. And I noticed Derek posted in the chat the links to the new MIOSHA and MDHHS's orders in case you need them. And of course, we sent out a update earlier today that has the links as well. Let's talk a little bit about the ARP bills again, the federal funding that's coming down, huge investment in county government. Hearing from some of our counties that money is starting to hit bank accounts, which is great news. But you know, as we've been talking about from the beginning, there's no rush to spend it, right?
No rush to spend it. It has to be allocated by December 2024. And from our perspective, and you know, for everybody out there, Stephen and I talk about it all the time. Don't be in a rush to spend it, please. Please don't be in a rush to spend it. You've got lost revenue that you can make up for with this money, and you don't really know what that lost revenue is going to be until, you know, all the way through next year. You're going to have a delay and some reductions in your property tax revenue, so just be careful about that. You can use it for lost revenue, but there's also a ton of programs that you can put this money into, whether it be water infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, and then we've been working with the Municipal League and with the administration and the state budget office, and now legislative leaders on match programs. So you may be able to match your money through the state to maximize the impact in that you're having at the local level. So, I mean, that's not soup yet. We're still working with them. We haven't ironed out all of the details or gotten them to agree what match programs they're willing to put state dollars into, but they're going to do it. And so, I mean, it really is wise to hold off for a while before spending these monies to maximize, you know, how much you can get and what you can do.
Yeah, and those discussions that you're having, those are pretty broad, more wide-ranging areas. There's some for economic development. There's some for affordable housing. There's some programs you're talking about, obviously, for broadband development. So it's a pretty broad plan that you guys have been discussing, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's nice because it's at all different levels of government. So how do we all work together to get these things done? We're talking about jails. We're talking about mental health. We're talking public health departments. We're talking, like you said, you know, economic development, housing programs, parks and recreation areas that need money and upgrades. You know, and then of course the infrastructure stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly that conversation changes if we get an infrastructure package at the federal level.
Right.
And then these American Rescue Plan dollars really do go toward, you know, some of the other things that might not be included in that. We'll be able to pivot. I'm not worried about that. But, you know, the flexibility that's going to be there, I think, is something that the counties are going to appreciate. They can pick and choose what you want to invest in and what you want to match and pull down. I mean, I really think it's going to be that broad.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up is the option. It'll be optional. It won't be forced. It'll be something that counties, different entities can choose to participate in. And just another note on the revenue side, if you are able to determine that you're using those funds because of lost revenue, that's going to be the most flexibility of the use of those funds. Because if you determine it is due to lost revenue, you can basically use it as your general fund dollars. If you're just going to use the funds for expense related or any of the other parameters, then you're going to be a little more restricted. So it's going to be best to try to use those funds as much as possible, or determine as much as possible that those funds were due to lost revenue, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, unless you want to capitalize on some of these match programs.
Right. And I think another question we've gotten a few times, road commissions coming to counties and asking for dollars. And I think we've kind of determined that the road commission should be going to the state. If they're thinking they have lost revenue, that's state lost revenue. The state can use those funds and give those back to the road commissions. It shouldn't necessarily be the counties that are replacing that lost revenue, because the counties weren't giving it to the road commissions anyway. It should be the state that's going to backfill those lost revenues.
Yeah, because it was gas tax revenues that were down. That goes through the Michigan Transportation Fund. Those are all state dollars. Those are not county general fund dollars. So yeah, I mean, if they have a loss, they should ask the Michigan Department of Transportation for those dollars, for sure.
And also, one other thing we've been asked is administrative fees. Yes, you can use third parties to help with these funds. We've actually have a program that we're going to be sending information out probably this week or next week that was done through Livingston County that'll we pre-qualified 4 different entities that have experience, mainly through CARES Act dollars through other counties, that'll be able to assist you in using these funds, tracking these funds, helping you with programs, giving you a red light, green light on whether a program is doable or not. So stay tuned on that, but those are eligible expenses as well for tracking, auditing, not necessarily auditing, but tracking and using those funds. So stay tuned on that. Finally, Deena, of course, there's other stuff going on in town here. What else have you been working on? What are some other bills that we've been tracking?
There's a lot going on in Lansing. Well, the 4-year county commissioner term bills, we're still waiting for a vote in the Senate. Apparently, they're kind of messing around again between whether it should be a gubernatorial election year or a presidential election year for when it starts. So we're really trying to get some answers there and push that forward. Hang tight. It was supposed to be on general orders last week, Thursday, in the Senate. Some kind of hiccup, and we're tracking it down, and we're still going to try and push it forward this week, but not quite there yet. What else? We've got some public notice bills that have had a hearing in the Senate already, one in Senate local government. There's been the same bills have been introduced in the House. Really what it does is it allows the newspaper industry to post this information online, which is great. They should already be able to do that. There is no reason that they can't do that as it is right now. The problem is that the legislation doesn't do anything to help local units of government. It doesn't help curb our costs. It doesn't help with, the timing of the publication. So let's say you've got, a week's notice, you have to have something out there for an entire week. If they miss that print publication deadline, then you're going to have to cancel your meeting. So we've offered some amendments to try and make this better, to cap the rate, to make the timing work for us a little bit more. Unfortunately, they have not been adopted yet, so we're fighting that, and we're going to continue to push for that. As we for vote this week, we've got binding arbitration for corrections officers, so your sheriff deputies in the jail. We've got a former county sheriff and another representative pushing forth legislation to require binding arbitration for deputies.
Nothing new.
Nothing new. We keep fighting this every single year. There are a lot of reasons why we fight it. Number one, Steve, you sat through how many of those work groups on unfunded liabilities? Remember the governor's office put that huge work group together, and you sat on that for a long time trying to come up with some solutions. Well, this is just going to continue to create more of a hole if the bargaining unit is making demands and the county doesn't want to actually give those benefits out. So we're opposed. We remain opposed. We'll testify against it this week. Keep going on that. Let's see. Bottle deposit. Bottle deposit is now back up. Now it's not expanding the bottle deposit like originally thought they were going to do when they talk about bottle deposit law. It's really trying to crack down on fraud. It carves out about $1 million out of the bottle deposit fund and gives it to the state police to crack down on fraud. That's it. Now it's going to reduce revenue to the remediation fund that is run through Eagle. So for environmental cleanup and stuff. We don't have a position yet, but we're going to talk about it in our environmental committee. Not a big fan though.
Whenever you talk about bottle deposit, it always reminds me of that Seinfeld. Did you ever see that Seinfeld where Kramer collects all the bottles and throws them in the van and goes across state lines to return them all? It's a great episode.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I had to
crack down on fraud.
Yeah, I had to throw that in there. Sorry to interrupt you. Anything else?
Not this week. I think that's plenty for this week.
Okay.
It's just a ton of stuff going on.
All right, Derek, are there any questions?
Yes, there are, Steve. First question from Brenda Tater in Montcalm County. Is there any word from Washington yet on a pre-approval process for ARP dollars prior to spending so we don't spend inappropriately and have to pay it back?
I just got an update today, and I haven't had a chance to read through it yet, something from NACO, and I'm not sure if that's included on it, something alluding to it, but we'll be sure to look into it further and let you know. I know those firms I mentioned, Guidehouse is one of those firms that was basically kind of performed that task for those CARES Act counties. So Wayne, Oakland, Macomb that got the CARES Act dollars would go to Guidehouse and say, can we do this? And Guidehouse would basically say, yes, you can, or no, you can't. But I will have to look into that further. At this point, I don't know if we've gotten anything that's kind of given that'll give you the pre-approval process, but we'll look into it.
Okay, Michael Newman up in Sheboygan County. Can these road commissions sort of double tap by going to MDOT and asking for lost funding, then asking the county for some of their funding?
Yeah, well, they can ask all they want from county. From our perspective, that the county's not required to give anything to the road commissions. That you can, of course, if you want, I think, but you're going to have to make that determination at the county level whether, the ARP funds don't qualify for road repairs. So if you've determined that you have lost revenue and you want to use those funds from your lost revenue and give them to the road commission, I guess you could do that. I probably wouldn't. I think I would keep it in the county budget. But our opinion is that the road commission should be going to MDOT, to the administration, and saying, hey, we had lost revenue. Your funds that the state received are eligible for lost revenue as well. They're under the same rules that counties are. They should be running those dollars through the normal Michigan Transportation Fund model. So that's our opinion on that. It shouldn't be really there. The county didn't lose revenue, didn't lose gas tax revenue. The state did. Anything else on that, Deena?
No, I think that covers it. It might be a little bit different if you have like a county road department.
Mm-hmm.
You had some lost revenue. You had some expenses if you were trying to get them to work remotely. That might work. That might be eligible. But as far as the road commission goes, again, I talked to Ed Noyola over at County Road Association last week and said, look, you guys got to make this pitch to, the Department of Transportation to get those transportation fund dollars back. So hopefully they're going to get that message out.
Okay, Marlene Brummer asked if Deena, you could go over the binding arbitration issue again. She wasn't quite clear on that.
Okay, so it is, I have the bill numbers right here in front of me, House Bill 4639 and House Bill 4725. It expands binding arbitration to corrections officers. So if you've got sheriff deputies that are out patrolling the road, or you've got, sheriff deputies in your jail, it would expand that binding arbitration to those corrections officers in the jail. So when you're doing your contract negotiation, if you can't come to an agreement, They will now have the option to go to that third party for, to work out the points in your contract that you can't agree on, and then you're bound by that decision. So we've, as like I said, as an organization, have opposed this expansion of binding arbitration. We call them PA 312 bargaining units. So it's a lot of police and fire that are usually in the bargaining unit. In the PA 312 binding arbitration, these bills would expand it to your corrections officers.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83, the go-to source for all information about Michigan's 83 counties.